For cans of tomato paste, it turns out they may contain mold.
Brands you trust, meals you repeat, health risks you never see coming. That can in your kitchen doesn't just hold tomatoes, it may carry a chemical exposure linked to hormone disruption, developmental issues in children, and long-term disease risk. BPA doesn't stay in the lining. It moves into the food, then into the body. And for children, the impact is deeper. Their systems are still forming, their brains still developing, making them far more vulnerable to even small doses over time. For pregnant women, the stakes are even higher. BPA can mimic estrogen during critical stages of fetal development, potentially interfering with how organs, hormones, and neurological systems are formed before birth. It's not just exposure, it's timing. And for older adults, it becomes a question of accumulation. Years of repeated intake, combined with slower detoxification, can compound into risks tied to heart disease, metabolic disorders, and hormone-sensitive cancers. The label looks simple, the ingredient seems harmless, but what's happening beyond what you can see is where the real story begins. 1. Hunt's. Hunt's is the brand you have probably seen more than any other in the canned tomato aisle, and it is the first brand on this list for a reason. Multiple independent blind taste tests, including evaluations published by Mashed, Tasting Table, and Food Republic, describe Hunt's canned tomatoes as excessively salty, watery in texture, and carrying a metallic aftertaste that survives cooking. That metallic character is not imagination. It is the signature of a product where the tomato's natural acidity has been interacting with the can lining across its entire shelf life, exactly the chemical interaction that BPA researchers have documented for decades. Although Conagra Brands, headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, and the parent company that owns Hunt's, has transitioned some varieties to non-BPA linings, its BPA disclosure across the full tomato product line remains inconsistent and incomplete. Consumers cannot determine with confidence which cans are lined with what compound and which are not. The sodium content runs higher than most comparable products in the category. For elderly consumers managing blood pressure or kidney function, a high-sodium canned tomato used several nights per week is a recurring source of excess that compounds quietly above the ceiling their physicians have already set. For children, whose sodium sensitivity differs significantly from the adult standard the label is designed around, the elevated sodium tells a different story entirely. A century of shelf presence does not equal a century of transparency. 2. Contadina. There is a brand that still speaks in the language of tradition, but what's inside no longer reflects the simplicity that story promises. The expectation is clear: tomatoes, clean flavor, something close to what would come from a kitchen, not a factory. But when the product requires added sweetness, masking flavors, and delivers an aroma that raises questions the moment the can is opened, that expectation begins to break. This is not just about taste, it's about what repeated exposure means over time. For a child, meals built around products like this become a routine.
Small, consistent inputs that shape long-term dietary patterns. When unnecessary additives become part of that routine, they stop being occasional and start becoming normal. For pregnant women, the intention is often to simplify, to choose foods that feel closer to their natural state. When that expectation isn't met, it introduces uncertainty into something that was meant to be controlled and safe. The story on the label remains the same, but the experience, the composition, and the consistency behind it tell a different story, one that only becomes visible when you look past the name.
3. Del Monte.
Del Monte Foods has provided American families with canned vegetables since 1886, and it is the third brand on this list because its ingredient panel contradicts the health image its marketing carefully constructs. Headquartered in Walnut Creek, California, Del Monte markets non-GMO commitments and sustainability values to health-conscious consumers. Some of its product lines do carry BPA-free can linings, a transparency step that earned it initial goodwill. Then, the Center for Science and the Public Interest identified that certain Del Monte varieties carry high fructose corn syrup as an ingredient. The American Heart Association has directly linked high fructose corn syrup to elevated triglyceride levels, metabolic dysfunction, and increased obesity risk when consumed regularly. For a pregnant woman monitoring gestational diabetes risk, finding this ingredient inside a simple canned vegetable is unexpected. For an elderly person managing blood sugar, the same discovery is not abstract. It is a repeated dietary exposure they were never told they were making. Food Republic ranked it poorly for flavor consistency and quality. 4. Great Value, Walmart. Great Value is Walmart's private store brand, and it is the fourth brand on this list because the savings it offers come with costs that never appear on the price tag. Manufactured under contract by third-party producers and sold exclusively through Walmart locations across the United States, Great Value canned tomatoes sit at the very bottom of the price range, often below $1 for a standard 14-ounce can. The formulation includes dried garlic, unnamed spices, and ingredients listed only as natural flavors, a regulatory category that can contain hundreds of distinct chemical compounds without any disclosure requirement beyond those 2 words on the label. When natural flavor masking is required in a product this simple, it communicates that the base tomato needed assistance, that the fruit was underripe, processed too quickly, or sourced from agricultural conditions that prioritized volume over quality. Walmart provides no transparency about where its Great Value tomatoes are grown, by whom, or under what farming conditions. The sourcing is completely invisible today. 5. Kroger brand. Kroger's store brand canned tomatoes are the 5th brand on this list, purchased by millions of households every week through habit and proximity, carrying a non-BPA disclosure that only tells half the story. Kroger is the largest supermarket chain in the United States by revenue, headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, and its private label tomato line does carry a non-BPA liner disclosure on the packaging, a transparency step that is real and should be acknowledged. What the non-BPA label does not address is the sodium content, which independent testing found among the highest in the entire canned tomato category, at 250 milligrams per half-cup serving, before a single additional pinch of salt enters the cooking pot. The formulation also includes calcium chloride, citric acid, dried garlic, and ingredients listed only as natural flavors and spices, a complexity that indicates the base tomatoes required support. Consumer communities across Reddit and grocery forums report a persistent bitter aftertaste that survives cooking, pointing to underripe tomatoes, processing inconsistency, or additive interaction with the fruit's natural acids and balance. 6. S&W Premium Foods. S&W Premium Foods is the 6th brand on this list, carrying over a century of brand heritage into a formulation that the ingredient panel of its stewed tomato line does not fully honor. Established in San Francisco, California in 1896 by 3 food wholesalers committed to quality, S&W has built a level of consumer trust that its name carries forward without always earning it fresh in the present day. Independent ingredient analysts and nutritional researchers have flagged S&W stewed tomatoes specifically for the inclusion of high fructose corn syrup, an industrial sweetener inside a product where consumers expect seasoned tomatoes and nothing more. The World Health Organization, the American Heart Association, and major nutritional health organizations across multiple countries have identified high fructose corn syrup as a contributor to metabolic disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and elevated cardiovascular risk when it appears as a recurring dietary ingredient. For an elderly person managing type 2 diabetes who reaches for stewed tomatoes as a simple, safe ingredient in a home-cooked meal, the high fructose corn syrup in this product is a dietary exposure their physician would not approve of if it were disclosed at the point of purchase.
For a child eating this product across hundreds of meals over years, the accumulated metabolic load of an industrial sweetener. 7. Rotel. Rotel is the 7th brand on this list, and the one whose identity as a beloved flavor staple has most effectively hidden what is written on the back of the can. Owned by Conagra Brands and produced primarily for the Texas and southwestern United States markets, Rotel's signature blend of tomatoes and green chilies has earned a loyal following across decades of American cooking culture. The flavor is genuine, the loyalty is understandable, the sodium is the problem. A single 10-ounce can of Rotel Original Recipe delivers sodium at a level reaching 37% of an adult's total recommended daily intake. 8. Muir Glen Organic. Safe Pick 1. Muir Glen is the first safe pick, a brand built from the beginning around doing it differently, and the evidence confirms that it has. Founded in Sacramento, California, and now part of the General Mills family of brands, Muir Glen was among the first mainstream canned tomato producers in the United States to transition fully to organic farming and to commit publicly to BPA-free can linings across its entire product line. Not selectively, not on certain varieties, across every product the brand produces. The tomatoes are certified organic, grown without synthetic pesticides, and harvested at peak ripeness. The Splendid Table, a nationally broadcast food program based in St. Paul, Minnesota, conducted a blind taste test of major canned tomato brands and ranked Muir Glen organic whole peeled tomatoes first among all brands evaluated. Tasters described it as a tomato you could eat straight from the can, natural acid and sweetness in a balance no other brand came close to matching. The ingredient list is 3 items: organic tomatoes, organic tomato juice, citric acid. For children, for pregnant women, for elderly consumers, Muir Glen is the brand whose commitments align with what the health evidence asks for. 9. Red Gold. Safe Pick 2. Red Gold is the second Safe Pick, a family-owned brand that has held the same values for over 80 years and built something that only consistency across generations actually produces. Founded in Elwood, Indiana in 1942 and still operated by the Reichart family, Red Gold grows, processes, and cans its tomatoes entirely within the Midwest United States. The same family controls the growing conditions, harvest timing, processing standards, and canning quality from field to finished can. No distant contracted facilities, no invisible sourcing gaps. Red Gold tomatoes are packed in BPA-free cans, are non-GMO certified, and carry sodium levels among the most responsibly managed in the mainstream category. The Splendid Table's blind taste test ranked Red Gold second among all brands evaluated, noting a natural balance of sweet, tart, and savory that independent reviewers across multiple platforms have confirmed consistently. For a family-owned brand operating with documented integrity for over 80 decades, the product delivers exactly what its history promises. Return now to the pantry shelf. Nothing on your shelf moved, but your awareness did, and that's where change begins. The next time you reach for that can, it won't be automatic anymore. If this made you think differently, hit like so others can see it too. Share this with someone who cooks for their family every day. And subscribe, because what's behind everyday products is a story more people deserve to understand.